It was absolutely incredible to be here to experience this. Now, I think we were both taken a little bit by shock at the announcement of Dublin. Were you, Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. Extraordinary announcement that it's going to be Dublin in 2018. Another place, of course, devastated by clerical sex abuse, which badly needs a shot in the arm, of course. I'm delighted because if he comes to Dublin, he can't possibly not come to the UK as well. So we're all looking forward now to a papal visit in 2018.
And now his homily was incredible as well. We were hearing the applause from the Holy Father's final blessing there. The homily was absolutely incredible too. I think what really struck me the most personally was that the comment about the small things that you can do. That's how you show love within the family and within the world, those small things.
Yeah, he's got a great devotion to Saint Teresa of Lisieux, of course, the pioneer of the spirituality of the little way, and he very much believes in that. It's in the little gestures, the tenderness, that of course we create a better world. Then of course he linked that lovely idea of the family to the bigger task of our common home. He brought in his greater concern about ecology, and he said only when we act as a family will we be able to solve the huge challenges that face this globe. So I think it was going from the micro to the macro and back to the micro again. But his other big message in the homily was don't block the spirit. You know, sometimes God has the freedom to act, and we must be open to that. So I think actually this morning's address to the bishops, and now in this homily, he's perfectly framed next month's synod. Don't lament, act, and don't block the spirit.
So in a way, it summarized this entire trip, right? Coming from Cuba to the United States, through 3 cities in the United States, and then now we're looking forward to that synod. Would you agree with that?
I do. I mean, look, in a way, this whole gathering today, 1.5 million people, faith in the city, absolutely extraordinary. I was watching the people, the priests carrying communion through the crowds under the Vatican umbrellas. Beautiful, just a river of faith. And the Pope himself said in the homily, in itself this gathering is a sign. It's prophetic. It points to something beyond itself. The wealth, the richness of a humanity gathered together in love and in communion. Lots of families becoming one family. I mean, in itself, one doesn't need to say anything more. This is a glimpse of the world that the Pope came here to foster and to encourage. And I think this week he's opened up a new space for the world, not just for America, a new vision for how we can be.
And that, just like you had said, that's something I've been saying all week as I've been staying through the World Meeting of Families. I've been watching what first started as a group, people who didn't know one another. They started to get to know one another and be bonded by this common spirituality, this common desire to live the best that we can in the life that God has given us. And it has become a family. We're seeing it among all the crowds. We're seeing it here on the risers. We are all becoming that family that under Pope Francis that he wants us to be.
You know, I was just a very little thing, but I joined a communion queue down there which had journalists and cops all gathered together waiting to receive communion. I thought in itself that was beautiful. This tremendous security which has surrounded these events, somehow it's all sort of dissolved now, you know, to see the cops going to communion. It's rather lovely. The boundaries come down. This is the power of the Holy Spirit. The Pope, of course, came this week from Cuba, building a bridge, breaking down walls, and inviting us to break down the walls of our own hearts. Lovely gesture at the end of Mass. Archbishop Paglia, head of the Pontifical Council for the Family, announcing that a collection is taken for Syrian families that have been persecuted. They're going to have a very harsh winter. We can only build family by remembering other families, by opening ourselves also to the margins, to the poor. And that, of course, this Pope, who came from the margins, from very, very far away, comes always with that message, connecting centre, periphery, those who have with those who have not. It's been very beautiful.
Absolutely, and we've seen many of these themes be wrapped up. The idea of going out to the periphery, as you mentioned, the idea of going outside ourselves instead of just closing ourselves off, and that's something that we've seen over and over and over in this Holy Father.
And that's an important message because, I mean, you know, there's a tendency for Catholics to feel beleaguered, besieged in a culture which often doesn't, we now know, culture and law, as the Pope was saying this morning, no longer support our understanding of marriage and family. What's our response to that? Is it to retreat behind defensive walls? Is it to become purists and dogmatists and lament everything? Or is it, in fact, to evangelize, to make it possible, easier for people who find it hard to commit, to make that commitment? So it's really a call for practical engagement. This is a Pope who sees the crisis or the secularism and the threats to faith as a temptation. And the temptation is to scurry behind our walls. He says, no, you've got to do what St. Ignatius called act against that temptation. Go out, break down the walls, make it easier for people to access the good of God, the good things that grace gives us. And I think that message has been very, very beautifully brought out today.
And as we even see, it's almost as if the gospel was tailor-made for Pope Francis. It makes that very specific reference to the little ones. Anyone who leads a little one astray should have a millstone around their neck. Now, I think that's something that Pope Francis would very much agree with, because he's made very specific references to grandparents over and over and over. We've seen him kiss a dozen little babies. It's something that the little ones who are so important to the Holy Father.
And I think, he used the word scandal, which is a very important word. Pope Francis, to some extent, is a scandal. He scandalizes the things he says, the people that he points to. And people are often and in a way, this is an invitation. He was saying in the homily, be careful that you're not scandalized by the Spirit. After all, Pope Francis is doing no more than opening up spaces or pointing to spaces which he sees the Holy Spirit is occupying, where God is speaking to us in the little, in the ordinary, in the marginalized, in the excluded, in what we don't recognize. And he's saying, just be careful not to block that off. And ultimately, that's why the message about the little things is important. It's in the little things, the little gestures, indeed the little people, that God speaks to us. And my image of him this week is somebody who's just creating those spaces, opening up those spaces, bringing down the walls, if you like, polishing the windows, so we can make it easier to see what often we can't see, which is God's presence in the stranger and the outsider.
And we've seen that happening very real in the people who are here. They're literally, physically close to one another. You have no personal space in that crowd, and I think that would be something that makes Pope Francis very, very happy. Now, if you would you've been following him all the way through Cuba, all the way finally to this culminating Mass, the very reason for the Pope's visit to the United States. What is it that really hits you, that really sticks out to you, sort of as the summary, the cap of all of this activity?
Well, we've seen Pope Francis address the Congress, address the United Nations, address bishops. He's been with immigrant children this morning, with prisoners. We've seen him with the crowds. We've seen him in so many different ways, in so many different guises, with so many different messages, speaking impromptu with prepared scripts, beautiful hour-long speeches, but also small, spontaneous moments. Very, very hard to capture one idea, but here's my idea. He's come to build a people. And I think that's what he was doing in Cuba, and that's what he's been doing here. He's building the people of God to help the people of God build their own nation of God, but also to contribute then to the building of the broader nation. And that's really what he is. I see him as a bridge builder, and I think he's done that beautifully this week.